Hey, happy Wine Wednesday.
There we are. Happy Wine Wednesday, Canadian wine lovers, Carl's Wine Club members, everyone across the country. Hey, happy Wednesday. Welcome to our weekly show. Wow, it is cold in here. Cheers.
So, you guys want to know what happened? About 20 minutes ago, we walked out of our car coming back from Calgary, where it is cold. And we're back in Okanagan now. But literally, we just got off a 8-hour car ride?
Yeah, just over 8.5 hours. Like oh, that, hey.
So,
and you know when
we're ready for a glass of wine.
Hey, more than one. You know what's better? I got 2 glasses of wines. Bam.
Yeah, baby.
Yeah. Double cheers out to all of you guys. Okay, from everyone from Vancouver Island to Prince Edward Island. Welcome to all of our Canadian. Yeah. Okay. If I start like mumbling or something, it's just because it's really freaking cold here. You know when you're gone for a week and you turn the heat off in your house and you just run in, turn the camera on, and you're like, oh, okay, that is really cold.
Because nowadays, with the price of natural gas and electric, you're not going to leave on your heat for a week if you're not there. So we left it on a little bit. But...
Yeah, very little, very little. So here we are. Un beau bonjour à tout le monde, toute notre gang d'amateurs de vin canadiens en français. On vous souhaite un bon mercredi. C'est notre Wednesday Wine Happy Hour avec Carl's Wine Club. Toute la gang du Québec, les gens de toutes les provinces francophones, de toutes les régions francophones du Canada qui sont amateurs de vin canadien. On vous souhaite la bienvenue encore une fois. Ce soir, on parle de vin de l'Ontario. On parle de vin Niagara. On parle plus spécifiquement des vins du Beamsville Bench à Niagara. Donc, on va vous donner un bel aperçu de cette sous-région. On va parler de vignobles en particulier. On vient juste d'arriver de Calgary. On vient de débarquer de la voiture il y a 10 minutes de ça. Fait que, on a passé les 9 dernières heures dans la voiture. Fait que si vous vous apercevez que je suis en train, là, que j'ai de la misère à parler, c'est parce qu'il fait fret en sacrifice chez nous. On avait fermé la température. Le temps qu'on était parti, ça fait une semaine. Fait que là, on vient de revenir à la maison. On parle de vin canadien, on parle de vin du Niagara, on parle de vin du Beamsville Bench. There you go, Mira.
Yeah. Oh, Daryl is giving us the Beamsville Bench update. -6 right now, -14 tomorrow. Whew. There's been a bit of a cold snap going across the place around here. C'est très froid ici, bien sûr. That's someone in our VIP group. I can't tell exactly who right this second, but that's...
Yeah. Mike LaPlante, good evening, the average wine enthusiast, Daryl, all of our people. Tonight, we want to start with the Canadian Wine Challenge to hash out, brings more in-depth knowledge, in-depth information, in-depth fun fact and stories about specific regions in Canada. So how about we start that tonight with one of our favorite sub-region in Canada. It's a region of Ontario, a sub-region of Niagara, a sub-region of the geographic appellation of Niagara Escarpment. We're going to talk about the Beamsville Bench tonight. Why the Beamsville Bench? Because I freaking love their wines. That's why. Here you go. End of the story.
We got some open, so we can tell you what it's like.
So, I love that.
Is this a Riesling, Carl?
No, it's not.
No, it's a Chardonnay.
This is a Chard.
Oui.
Leslie, good evening, Leslie. Nice to have you on. So because next week we're going to feature Cave Spring Cellar. So Cave Spring is
for those of you that are tuning in, you get in on the secret because usually we keep it secret.
Oh yeah. Oh man,
we're gonna let them all in on the secret.
I'm getting too excited, but yeah, okay. But you know what? Yeah, okay. Next
But
week, we're featuring
Spring,
Cave Spring.
so you see this picture, Carl Boucher? You see this picture of us? Look how
I
young
know.
we looked.
I know. It was just
That was with a Cave Spring bottle. And that was like the month before we started Carl's Wine Club. We were like, hey, we should do something with Canadian wine. The pandemic's just started. Do you guys remember that? The summer of 2020? That was us, summer of 2020. Do you see how many more gray hairs I have? This last couple of years have done a number. But it's kind of cool because we have not tasted Cave Spring since then, I think.
Well, no, that's not true. We tasted one Cave Spring last year for Riesling Day. We had the CSV Riesling 2019.
Right.
It was one of our top. It was one of our top Riesling of Riesling Day, over 40 Rieslings last year. So, but yeah, that's the last one. And next week,
last week we've been tasting a lot because, like Carl said, we're featuring them next week in the club, and it's going to be a heck of a value buy, isn't it?
Absolutely. And we have like 9 wines available next week from Cave Spring. So we're like, okay, how about we start talking about a little bit more specific in terms of regions? And yeah, the Beamsville Bench is it's worth talking about the Beamsville Bench because it's like, to me, the Beamsville Bench on the Niagara Escarpment is a little bit the equivalent of the Naramata Bench here. That's a little bit how I compare BC creme de la creme versus Niagara creme de la creme. And it's that there's some great wine in every sub-region. Like if we go to BC, we're like, well, West Kelowna Wine Trail have some fantastic wine. Oliver, Osoyoos, like everywhere. But when we talk about the Naramata Bench, everyone gets like, woohoo, Naramata Bench, oh my God, because there's something specific about the bench. If I go to Niagara, oh, absolutely, an OTL, like Niagara on the Lake with the 4 mile, the 4 Mile Creek appellation, that's something really special. We have the 20 Mile Creek, something really special. Lakeshore, but the Beamsville Bench have something pretty cool, something like almost mythic, or like, I don't know, this is something pretty, like, there's some iconic wines or from the Beamsville Bench. And speaking about iconic wines, come on, Carl's Wine Club, #1 wine of the year this year comes from the Beamsville Bench. This with Rennie. Look, see? BQA Beamsville Bench. Yes, yes. So there's some pretty cool wine coming out of the Beamsville Bench. Around 20 wineries or so who makes some of these really, really, really special and unique wine. I'm asking a question to you guys on the chat. What is your favorite wines from the Beamsville Bench? Or what is your favorite winery?
Or even Niagara. We'll take Niagara anywhere on the peninsula if you can't think of Beamsville Bench specifically. But now I know some people are going to go Googling, is this winery on the Beamsville Bench?
That's it. But that's what Google is for. I don't know everything. Google is one of my best friends as well. Especially when my kids ask questions about school and I don't have a clue and I don't want to look stupid. So I go on Google. JD, comment ça va, mon Jean-Denis? Un bon mercredi soir à toutes vous autres. Angel's Gate Pinot Noir. There you go.
Angel's Gate's one of them. So I heard, like, we're just learning about some of these wineries. I've never tasted Angel's Gate, but I heard they had like a convent up on the hill there. That's why it's called Angel's Gate. So a long time ago.
See, there you go.
Chardonnay and Riesling from the bench. Oh yeah.
Well, I think so. Like there's some really, really classic profile. Fielding, yeah, absolutely. I'm with you. Fielding is one of the rock star classic. Malivoire. Malivoire is one of the classic from the Beamsville Bench. What else?
13th from Niagara for sure. One of our very favorite Niagara ones. It's just next to the Beamsville Bench, I think. And that's what we'll figure out in a second because Marcel sent us a really wicked map.
Absolutely. Come on. Like everyone knows Marcel. Marcel's always do the thing right. And thank you for getting our back, Marcel, because that was quick. After hours, boom, a map showed up in my inbox. It was pretty darn special.
Yeah,
Thanks,
it gets
Marcel.
a little bit confusing. Like we've been drinking these wines for 2.5 years, like, thousands now of Canadian wines, so many from the bench. And then we're trying to figure out, okay, where's Beamsville Bench? Where's Vinemount Ridge? Where's Creek Lakeshore or something like that?
Lincoln Lake Shore, Creek, Short Hill Bench. Well, these are all the sub-GI from the Niagara Escarpment, right? But they're all so close from each other.
And then, of course, for me, it's like it doesn't mean all that much if I don't know what wineries we're talking about. And then I realized, I'm like, oh, this winery is not on the Beamsville Bench. But then I realized, yeah, you have maps. That's awesome. Then I realized, like, their vineyards might not be where their winery is always, right? So it's interesting. But what Marcel has, which is really awesome for a map, is there's a lot of maps of the where the appellations are, like where the Beamsville Bench is within the Niagara Escarpment. But there's very few, if none, that I could find wineries with the sub-appellations on the same map.
Okay, so before you go there, Mira, I love that. But I have to say, for me, from the Beamsville Bench, I love the Pinots. You guys all know how I love Chardonnays. But to me, my favorite grape varietal from the Beamsville Bench has to be Riesling. And there's a very like Rieslings for me from the bench has that crazy, beautiful minerality that I can't pinpoint. A little bit like the flavor, like the 20 Mile Bench for Chardonnay. I can pinpoint a 20 Mile Bench Chardonnay. Well, I say that I can pinpoint Riesling. I completely messed up a two Riesling from across the country a couple of weeks ago, so I should not say that. But anyway, no, I think for me, my personal favorite varietal is Riesling from the Beamsville Bench. And I know that they're known for the Pinot. I know that, Pinot and Gamay. But to me, personally, I'll go with Riesling.
Yeah. So Mike's saying, always thought of everything west of St. Catharines to be the Beamsville Bench, and that's probably not accurate, but it's true, Mike. Like there's a lot of articles written like about the Beamsville Bench, and they'll include a lot of them west of St. Catharines. But yeah, we finally looked at the map and we're like, oh, really? Technically, there's only like 10 or 15 that are literally in the Beamsville Bench. But I think it comes down to that whole thing about, well, where's your vineyard, right? So if most of your vineyards are on the bench, but your winery is a kilometer south in Vinemount, well, what kind of winery are you?
Well, and the thing is, well, that's exactly it. It's vineyard designation. At the end of the day, that's what you find on the bottle. That's the vineyard designation. It doesn't have to be your vineyard, but where the source of grape is coming from. And in Ontario, and that movement is growing more and more every year. It's where people goes vineyard specific. People grow, like there's some growers who are absolutely so pinpoint now that like people like Thomas Batchelder, people like there's many small producer who buys grape from very specific grower, and there are in many different sub-appellation. So this is one of the new trend where it's not necessarily always the estate fruits. Let's have it as an example. Ilya Senchuk at Leaning Post. Ilya is like a master winemaker. He does a phenomenal job. Is Senchuk Vineyard located in Lincoln Lake Shore, but he also gets some grapes from very specific grower in different appellation and brings that under his own portfolio. So there's a different way. So what you see on the label, the VQA Beamsville Bench, doesn't necessarily mean that the winery is on the Beamsville Bench, but the grapes are from the Beamsville Bench. So
Which, when you think about it for a second, that's like, of course. And Brian Schmidt's on. Hey, Brian, that's so great to see you. And so he mentioned that too. Appellation is all about where the grapes are. Totally. But as a consumer, I look at that and I'm like, oh, that's nice. They're located there. Like if I go visit, I'll go to the Beamsville Bench and I'll go look for them.
Yeah. No, exactly. And that's that little part of, can I call it education? I know we don't want to educate our people, but these are facts that helps our members, our Canadian wine lovers, our 10,000 people across the country to understand a little bit more of the system, right? And this VQA system, that GI, that regional appellation split under the sub-GI. And so this is very, very, very specific, and there's different rules. So yeah, what you see.
What's interesting, hey Carl, is Niagara and Ontario. I think they've done a really good job. They've been at this longer, I think, than in BC, trying to designate like what's special about each parcel of land and which
absolutely. The VQA designation now that has been, I think they're much more, I would say, advanced in Ontario, in Niagara, than there is in BC. BC is trying to catch up now. They just released last year another 4 or 5 new sub-GI. It's like Summerland now are split in between 3 new sub-GI. Kelowna, West Kelowna, East Kelowna. They all have these sub-GI under review right now. I know that Muskoka get their own sub-GI. So it's work in progress here in BC. But I think Ontario, we're light years ahead than what we were in BC. And I really love how more precise and specific the system in Ontario is. And yeah, for me now, after 3 years of really, really, really focusing my time on Canadian wines, I'm starting to get a grasp on the Niagara wine map. And but still work in progress. Like, I know that the Beamsville Bench versus Vinemont Ridge are so close, and versus the 20-mile bench, but I'm starting to get the specific flavors. There's some specific trait from each and every grape varietals coming from each and every specific sub-GI. So yeah, I'm really starting to get some specific trait of each and every one. So it's getting pretty cool.
Totally.
So Brian, I said Brian Schmidt is on, so I think I'm going to abuse him a little bit right now. I'm going to ask him some questions because Brian
is still on, but we'll see.
Come on, his winery is in Vineland, so the town of Vineland, who is technically on the Beamsville Bench, correct? So and
yeah. Oh, and look at this. There's a regional app referred to as Niagara Escarpment that encompasses all the benches, because there's the Beamsville Bench and there's a couple others, right? There's 20-mile bench.
Short Hill Bench, also 20-mile bench, Vinemont Ridge appellation. Okay. There you go. See, there's these little details that I'm not grasping 100% here, right? So, Brian, I want to know if Brian, because Brian is the Cap Franc guy, right? So I want to know, is there a very specific potential for Cap Franc on the Beamsville Bench, or is there something more special next to the Beamsville Bench for his Cap Franc? So I want to know a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so what we've learned is that there's this escarpment. Carl and I were out in Niagara last year, and the bench is closer to God, right? Higher up. I love it. And hey, Denise, good to see you. And so we're out there, and people keep talking about this escarpment, okay? And and we're like, the escarpment, right? The escarpment is so important. It's so important to viticulture, the airflow, and all this sort of stuff that happens because of the escarpment. And we keep like trying to see it on the landscape. We're coming from BC, okay? In BC, in the Okanagan, we got mountains that are like massive, the Rockies, right? So people are telling us, oh, it's like a little mountain. It's like a little mountain. We're like, mountain? God, where? We're looking around. We finally saw it. It's like this hill. It's like a ridge, a little hill, right? And so we realized that's what it is. And coming from BC, we're like, well, that's just
That's
like
the escarpment. Okay, that's the escarpment.
It makes sense now. But yeah, it is a big deal, I think, for the reason why so many people are growing grapes around there, right?
Well, I think, yeah, you mentioned it, the airflow. I think the way that the air comes from Lake Ontario and circulate all the way to the escarpment and coming back as a very, very, very big influence. And especially in Ontario with the humidity, there's a higher potential, like really, really greater potential of disease because of the humidity. And with the airflow of the escarpment, really, really protect these kind of thing and protect against the frost and all that. So, and like a great example of that, I would say, was in 2021 with the frost damage, and you saw much less frost damage on the bench than in any other sub-region, especially with Niagara on the lake. So that's a very big impact and influence, but also the type of soil. I see, well, here, Brian is replying to me with a little bit more information here. And the limestone and clay makes a big difference for certain grape varietal, especially for Cap Franc. So when you find out about like exactly the type of wine that you like and varietal that you like, and with the connection with certain type of soil, and that's what makes like very some house style of wine. That's where you can find, especially at Vineland or at Cave Spring, or at Angel Gate, or all of these these wineries producing 30 mile Hidden Bench as well. So yeah, I like my whole point to that is I really like how Ontario VQA system has developed some very sub-GI specific, and yeah, I think it's very important for the personality and also for the, how can I say that? Like, yeah, being really like vineyard specific, and for the precision of the wine, coming back to the old world when you go to Burgundy, and it's village per village and sub appellation. All of these things are so important. So yeah.
So here's the awesome map that Marcel sent us. Thank you so much, Marcel, from Bella Terra Vineyards. And what I love is it does have a bunch of the wineries sort of in red dots, as well as these sub appellations. This little area on the left, that's the lightest area in the middle. That's what we're talking about, Beamsville Bench. But there's, above that, closer to the lake, you've got the link. What do you call that? So hard to see. Let me tell you in a second.
Is it the Lincoln Lakeshore?
Well, I think it's Lincoln Lakeshore as
the
sub-appellation. Yeah. And what I heard about that, because like Brian's saying, the soils matter, right? We all know the soils matter for grapes, the way the wine tastes. I think Lincoln Lakeshore is the one that has more clay, right? And so that means that the vines are having to struggle to get through the clay, and they're getting more concentrated in the grapes, in the flavors and stuff.
It's not about that. It's about the water retention, right? Water retention has a very big difference. If your vineyard is more on limestone or let's say in sand, like we found here in BC, on let's say on the Black Sage Road, where it's almost a beach at some point. So the water doesn't stay. The water goes straight down. So the vines are struggling a lot. So there's such a difference in terms of taste, flavor profiles, and all that. So yeah, that's what we're working a little bit more on, is to give the members a little bit more information about specific sub-regions, specific sub-appellation. And I think it's fun now to start comparing side by side from one appellation to another, and also seeing that some vintages are different. They're giving very, very different final result on the wine at the end, compared to, depending on which sub-appellation you are located in. So yeah. Sorry, I'm just trying to warm up here. It is freaking.
Oh, you're in a spot where the heat doesn't get to you as readily. I'm right by the fire. You might want to come down here.
I'm starting to have a hard time to
smell the wine. Yeah, just come down here. It's warm.
That's fine. We're getting there.
All right.
Yeah.
So, Cave Springs. This is the Chardonnay. Do you have the bottle up there, Carl?
I sure do.
And it's Beamsville Bench?
This is Beamsville Bench. So what we have here, it's the CSV. So this is their top of the line, the CSV Chardonnay. They also do their CSV Riesling. That CSV Chardonnay is an absolute beauty. There's a beautiful blend of minerality, like a hint of oak. It's like that. There's a beautiful balance. And even with the 2020, we all know that 2020 vintage is the bomb, right? Hot, big. I tasted some. You know what? Like, to be honest, for Chardonnay, I prefer 19 vintage than the 2020 vintage personally, because I think that the Chardonnay shine a little bit more with the acidity on the 19 vintage compared to the 2020. So, but this has a beautiful balance, great minerality. I'm telling you, I haven't done my tasting notes yet because we cracked that yesterday. Okay, we were in Calgary. We had like something like 9 hours meetings, like crazy 2 days back to back. So yesterday afternoon, we took a break, and I opened that bottle of the CSV Chard to pour for some of our friends in Calgary who are a fan of California wines. And I always love the reaction when people are like, "Oh, where does that come from?" I don't guess. Why? Is that Sonoma? Is it Washington State? I'm like, no. Niagara? Yeah. They were absolutely blown away by that bottle of wine. And personally,
one of them said, "Oh, I tried Canadian wines like 15 years ago, and I tried a few, and I was like, oh, they were just too like acidic for me. I couldn't do it." And I'm like, "You tried one or two? Like, there's thousands and thousands. There's so many good ones."
Yeah, and I'm just looking at some of the comments here and say, Cave Springs, I love it. They have been one of the most consistent producer of gorgeous wine since forever. But you know what? I'm not sure exactly but that the Panichetti family, like literally, they're one of the builder of the region. Like, we're looking at, like, there's some really key names in our wine history. BC, or it doesn't matter if it's in BC or in Ontario, but each of our region have these founder, these creator who have built it, like they helped build what we have today. And the Panichetti family is absolutely right up there about the work they've been doing since I believe it's since the 70s. So in term of consistency, it's one of the things that I think, yes, you nailed it in terms of consistency, quality, and value.
Totally. It's so exciting because we're featuring them next week, and we will meet somebody from the winery on Wine Wednesday next week just to hear their story firsthand. It's going to be awesome. Hey, Leslie's saying, wish I knew you were in Calgary. Would have been fun to get together. I so agree, Leslie. I hope we can see you the next time. This was like a whirlwind last minute trip. And we had our 3 kids, and don't tell our Airbnb hosts, but we had our hamster there. And one of our kids got a stomach bug. And so thank goodness for the former babysitter that could come help out. But anyway, we had some meetings, and
if I put into that like 9 hours of meetings on 2 days back to back. So yeah, I know. It was
crazy.
pretty
But next time, Leslie, because that is something we want to talk about a little bit more, even in this show, is the Canadian Wine Challenge and what we can do to really like get this challenge on the map, to make a difference, to sort of, we're not just tasting wines here, but we're starting a movement. We want Canadians to get behind this, and the world.
And Mira, I want to say something. That's exactly what you're talking about, right? The stories behind this is much more than a bottle of wine. You know?
Totally.
I want something else. This here. This is much more than a bottle of wine. This is much more than a bottle of wine. Behind all of that, there's a fantastic story. If it's about the Penichetti family, the Schmid family, the Speck family, all of these families who helped create what we have today, who they've built through like with the second generation, and now some of these families, the third generation. Like, this is what we're talking about. This is much more than wines. This is much more than a bottle of wine. There's so much history inside of that, and that's what I want to highlight more and more and more every week and every trip that we're going to do. To bring
we need a little bit of like chicken soup for the Canadian wine lover's soul.
Absolutely, right? Because this is fantastic juice. This is world class. I want to put Cave Springs CSV beside any of the Pouilly-Fussé, because Pouilly-Fussé is not the top appellation in Burgundy, but it's all solid and consistent. This will crush some of the best Pouilly-Fussé. I want to put that beside some Côte de Beaune. There's so much potential, but more than the juice, the story behind that is just so, like, this is so rich. There you go, all right?
More, there's no more, because we had this yesterday too, right? This is just the last little bit.
Look.
Oh, why are you wasting those drops?
No, they were in here.
Oh, they're in your glass. So
hey, no way.
Jeez, you got me scared for a second.
So, the red. Okay, that's what we have here. Okay, this is the estate grown. Okay, this is the Beamsville BQA estate.
Smells good.
I believe that wine is something like $20 at the most.
Oh, I hope you're right, because
22 at the most. I don't know.
What is it exactly? Tell me again.
This is Cave Spring Estate.
Yeah.
2020 vintage.
Estate what? Cab Franc? Like, what is it?
Estate. Well, yeah. Sorry. Yes, Cab Franc. Tell me the price.
Your researchist is looking it up. So I don't see it yet. Maybe it's sold out. So it's like on other people's websites, though, for $19.75, $19.95. So I think you're right.
It's under $20. That's absolutely fantastic.
Including tax.
Including tax. And again, we're talking about freshness. We're talking about minerality. And we're talking about, this is not overpowering. This is not over juicy. Even if it's a 2020 vintage, this is medium body. There's some nice earthiness in there. This is smooth. but there's a solid structure. I love the backbone of acidity behind that wine. This is killer for $19. Yeah. So this is just a little snapshot of Cave Spring. We're gonna have 9 wine from Cave Spring to talk about next week. But that's what lead me to talk about the Beamsville Bench, because there's some specific flavor profile that you can experience from the bench. Pinot Noir is also like, let's not get carried over here. I think Beamsville Bench is famous for their Pinot, and we're going to deep a little deeper here in our research, but I think like Thomas Batchelder is producing a couple of the Pinots who are from the Beamsville Bench. Hidden Bench is one of the most, I would say, awarded vineyard winery on the bench who produce
one of the bigger ones. So we looked it up on the VQA website, I think, or maybe it was a wine growers website of Ontario, and it was about 58,000 cases of wine produced in 2021 to 2022. And if you divide that by what they claim is 16 wineries, that's about 3,500 cases, 3,700 cases per winery. So yeah, small lot wineries. I'd say Hidden Bench is probably one of the top few, because I think they're about 10,000 cases a year. They're a bigger one.
Yeah, and double wineries like Malivoire produce a little bit more as well. But yeah, so Megalomaniac, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
And Vineland is on the Beamsville Bench, like the winery itself. Vineland?
I will ask, because we found different sources who are.
Yeah, that's the thing. We find some articles that said, yes, it's on the Beamsville Bench. And then if you look at the actual map, you're like, well, how do you claim that a winery is on the Beamsville Bench? You know, so there's articles saying places to go when you're on the Beamsville Bench. And then, of course, there's the sub-appellation.
20-mile bench. That's what I was saying. So there you go. We got our answer. It's on the 20-mile bench. Okay. So yeah. And
the winery itself is on 20 Mile, which I like. It's just adjacent. Like, it's just the bench, but it goes Beamsville, 20 Mile, and Short Hills Bench, right?
You got that right.
They're pretty close together too.
Yeah. I don't know how long you want to run that today, but I know that. Yeah, I know that I'm freezing.
Well, then let's get your ass downstairs. All the vineyards are on the 20-mile bench. Oh, that's good to know, Brian, for Vineland. That's awesome. Good. Well, you know what, Carl Boucher? I think that it's been fascinating learning about the Beamsville Bench. Even better is drinking the wines.
Well, I think that we're just scratching the surface. Because what I want to do with Carl's, with the Canadian Wine Challenge, we're going to invite all of our VIP Plus and VIP Unlimited for a very focus-oriented Zoom tasting, and I want to invite some of the main producer from the 20-mile bench to chat with them, and we're going to dig deeper into the
Beamsville Bench.
That's what did I say?
20-mile bench.
No,
but even just Niagara Escarpment in general, and trying to understand the different parts of it, right?
Exactly. So that's what I'm working on. I already talked with Thomas Batchelder about coming in and talk, because Thomas produced wines from many different appellations. I would like to have someone from the Pinichetti family, someone maybe from, I don't know if you ever heard of a Brian Schmidt, but maybe he would like to be on with us. I don't know. But I want to bring some people, like different of these people all together, so we can give some very specific information of what makes all of these sub-appellations so special, and so we can have a better understanding of who's where, who's who, and why.
And also, what's different? Because as someone newer to wine, I was like, what's all the fuss about the appellation? And then, you know what? There are some signature flavors and aromas and different things. So I have started to actually be able to tell a little bit. Sometimes I think this is from there, and then I'm right. It's like so exciting. So
yeah,
it's a great learning opportunity.
Absolutely. 100%. That's funny because I got here the Speck family here, right? It's Henry of Pelham. So what I'm seeing, if I'm correct, I think this Short Hills appellation, that's where
Short Hills Bench here.
yeah, the Short Hill Bench is where Henry of Pelham is located.
We'll
With
check.
Vineland, it's on the 20-mile bench. Beamsville, more Cave Spring, and I believe Taws actually. Anyway, so many.
So if you want to know, like wineries that for sure are in the geographical area that is Beamsville Bench, we're talking Peninsula Ridge, we're talking Hidden Bench, Angels Gate, Organized Crime, Fielding, Q Vineyards, Malivoire, Megalomaniac, Mountain Road Wine. I've never heard been, so new one to check out. And then when you say Henry of Pelham, I see them on here as Henry of Pelham. Yeah, I'm not 100% sure. I'm not seeing them on the map. That
I think it's the Short Hill Bench.
Yeah, you're right.
I think so.
Good job.
Learning. It's funny because we live here in BC, so it's easy for me geographically. We know the valley. We're up and down the valley on a weekly basis. So, but going all the way across the country, just these small little details, right? So, and it makes a huge difference. They have these delimitation. There's these lines where they really separate these sub-appellations for a very specific reason, because the soil is changing, the sun inclination is changing, and all of these small details. So yeah.
Amazing. So Brian Schmidt, if you recall the epicness of last summer, Carl, where he
best tailgating we've ever done here with Carl's Wine Club.
Tailgating, and it was the most phenomenal experience ever, tasting wines in his vineyard while tailgating and learning about them. Amazing. He's saying if we go back down this summer, he's going to give us a tour of the Niagara Escarpment itself.
You know what? Start the car, Mira.
Yeah, so we'll be over. How long does it take to drive out there? We'll be there by the summer, I think. Yeah, that's awesome, Brian. Thank you so much. And yeah, don't be surprised if we take you up on that at some point. We'll be in touch.
Now, Brian, we really want to start focusing on the stories behind the label. We want to start talking to all Canadian about the history behind what we're doing, because we believe that where we are now in the curve of our progression towards greatness, because that's where we're heading in terms of
as a wine region, as a Canadian wine region.
Absolutely. And now we're at a point where we can start telling stories behind who helped to build where we're at now. And I believe that's what I said, behind this, there's much more than a bottle of wine. There's stories and there's passion, and we want Canadian wine lovers to connect emotionally with what you guys have been doing. Your family, Brian, the Panichetti family, all of these great founder and builder of our industry.
And I love this. Look at this quote right here. Wine is family stories in a bottle.
Absolutely. 100%. Each wine has a story waiting to be told, right? So I love it.
The thing about the family is that, yes, it's such a community thing. Wine is communal. It's all about connecting, right? So I love
sharing knowledge, sharing passion, sharing hard work, because at the end of the day, this is not just a walk in the park. This is hard work. But all of that knowledge that this family has gathered in the past 30 years, 35 years, and now everyone has the benefit of all of that knowledge combined together, and you can feel it in the juice, in the wine. Now there's so much more knowledge available, and we can produce world class. We are not a little subpar region anymore. These wines are worth telling the stories. And that's what we're going to work on much more, much harder, and across the country in this year.
And we welcome your ideas, because when we say, okay, like, how did Napa get on the map? Well, part of it was some outrageous event called the Judgment of Paris, right? There's a cool movie about it now. How did some of these other wine regions get on the map? How did they get a seat at the table? And we're there. Like, all the hard work has already been done in so many ways. And I think now for us, like, we need to start telling these stories and celebrating in so many ways how far this wine region's come.
Exactly. Yeah, well, and we're going to start talking about it much more seriously, Mira, with some partner in Niagara, with some partner in BC. How can we bring these people together in different places, in different food outlet? And when we're talking about like great restaurants in our country, some place where our people can come and taste with us, with the winemaker from BC, from Niagara. I have like it's boiling in here. Yeah, I am so thrilled for. I can't wait. I can't. So yeah.
Well, thank you to you guys, because I know that for many of the people that stopped by tonight, I mean, we met virtually like this during the pandemic, and we helped each other get through all that. And I'm just so excited to be seeing more and more of you guys in person and moving to take this whole thing to the next level. Super exciting stuff.
The Canadian Wine Challenge, it's a thing. It's a thing. And like the train has left the station. The train is moving. Let's bring everyone we know. Everyone we know who are proud of like, oh, I know, like one of my favorite wine is Argentinian Malbec. Oh, I love my Chilean Carmenere, or I'm like, just like, yeah, I know. But there's so many great wines that we make here in our country and can compete with all of these wines on the shelf at the SAQ and the LCBO and all of these retail stores across the country. When I see like stacks of cases of wine of Donna Pollock, Malbec, or I don't know, like name the brand. Like I know that we produce wine that can crush these brands so like in so many different ways, and yeah, that's where we're at now. So
yeah, so send us your ideas. We've got a whole bunch brewing. Anything. Always choose our wines on the menu. Yeah, thank you. But even things like people who make these menus, we're corralling them into a group and helping them see, all the things we see as we taste dozens of wines every day, every week that are all Canadian. We're disseminating that information to people who are building the wine lists at the restaurants, and getting them on board with this challenge as well. So
how about a newsletter that we're going to send to SOMs and wine directors across the country? Say, hey, here's my highlight of the week this week, guys. You need to contact these wineries, like something like that. We need to educate everyone, but not educate, just bring people on the train with us.
And it won't take a lot. It just takes people giving it a chance. And once you start tasting some of these wines that we're saying, wow, they stand out, I don't think there's any going back. Why would you?
No, but then you know what? You know what's going to be the end? The end effect of all that?
What's that?
Canada is not going to be. We're not going to import 70% of the wine that we sell. Like we are one of the only wine producing country to import more wine that we sell our own wine. So this is an absolute nonsense at all, especially with the quality of wine that we produce. So by bringing all of these people on the train with us, that's going to be the end result. The Canadian people will drink the best Canadian wines. Like we don't need to import that many wine.
No. And when a winery makes great wine, I think it should sell out instantly. I think the people who are following that vintage should get first dibs. And because we're small in terms of volume. So
it's a drop in the bucket, for God's sake. It's a drop in the bucket.
Yes.
Don't you think? Like I always says, like I think I have in mind 13th Street Première Cuvée or Grande Cuvée. It kicks some of the great champagne's house ass big time. I taste Brian's Cap Franc, and I can go to Loire Valley, and say, hey, this is as good, but with our Canadian twist here. Like there's like Chardonnays, right? Like there's so many great Chardonnays in our country. The Silva Chardonnay. I can take it, the Silva Legado, and go down to Sonoma in the Russian River Valley and say, hey guys, let's crack side by side here. I'm pretty sure that our thing here there's so many examples all across the board. So yeah. It's the Canadian Wine Challenge. The train has left the station. Come on in. Let's tell everyone.
Let's get on board with this challenge and let's do it. Let's do some fun things. So yes, more coming soon. Lots of brainstorming happening right now. And I hope you guys have an amazing Wine Wednesday night.
Hey, that was fun.
It's going to be great to see you next week to see somebody, hopefully from the Panichetti family from Cave Spring. We're not quite sure exactly who yet, but someone's going to stop by. We're going to learn a lot more about the 9 wines Carl chose from Cave Springs. And we're really excited.
We're going to focus on Chardonnay, Riesling, and Cap Franc. That's the 3 varietal that we're going to focus on next week. All Beamsville Bench. So to everyone who have tuned in today, merci beaucoup. Un gros merci à tout le monde qui se sont joints à nous. Un autre Wine Wednesday rempli de passion et de belles discussions. Thanks, everyone. So until next time, cheers.
Cheers.